Back to Politics Tonight, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us. Tonight, we're taking a closer look at the Cybercrime Act, which the CBN references as the basis of the directive, and we're also taking another look at the hike in the electricity tariff. And I've been speaking with Honorable Shamsudeen Dambazau, former member, House of Representatives. Honorable, thank you so much for staying with us on Politics Tonight. Now, earlier before we went on break, I mean, to be for and against, because before we went on that break, I was asking if you agree with Minister Adelabu, who had said if we do not remove subsidy, we may be in trouble in future. And I wanted to know if you agree with his position, because there are those who say if this hike is not effective, we may not be able to attract investors to fund and sustain the electricity sector. Is this a case of being between the devil and the deep blue sea?
No, it's not being between the devil and the deep blue sea. It's a very clear matter, Jumoke. The subsidy on the electricity should not be removed. I think it's one of the last things that Nigerians are looking to for succor with the economic hardships that Nigerians are feeling. So I think, if not anything, more money should be added into the subsidy, like I said, because once electricity is subsidized, it impacts Nigerians' lives directly. And then, like you rightly mentioned, we are losing investors. Why are we losing investors? Because you need to create an environment that businesses will thrive. How do they thrive? Is by making profit. Is by factors of production being affordable for them. So once the factors of production are astronomical, and Nigerians are demanding more for wages because their cost of living has gone up and the purchasing power of the naira has gone down, then you are creating this soup of catastrophe in the near future. So I think this is one of the things that Mr. President should listen to Nigerians on. The tariffs should remain on the electricity, and even more money should be put into that. If there are incentives for businesses as well, I think that would help to boost the economy and even invite investors back into the country. Because without this electricity, Jumoke, we will not be able to develop as a nation. It's one of the most important aspects that has been drawing Nigeria back. When we don't have adequate electricity, you can ask people that run businesses, even I myself. We know how much more we spend when we have to run generators when there's no light, or when we have to put inverters, or we have to maintain those inverters. So the cost of production and our overhead costs go up significantly. And when the electricity is available, it drives it down and it encourages people to come in. More entrepreneurs will come into the business. You have a better environment and space for people to be productive, because we want the ultimate goal for any country is to achieve economic development. And I promise you that without stable electricity, that economic development, we will not be able to achieve it. And talk less of having proper health care or having proper facilities, or embarrassing situations that will happen when we're at the airport, etc. So I think it is very important that Mr. President channels some of the money into tariffs for electricity, as opposed to what the Honorable Minister is suggesting.
Honorable, you would agree with me that the big question has always been, why does Nigeria struggle with electricity?
Mm-hmm. Is that a question, or is that rhetorical, or
in your opinion, why does Nigeria struggle with electricity?
Oh, do you know, it also beats me, because I grew up in this country, and right from when I was a kid, I've always seen power outages. And I think these power outages were happening even before I was born. And they are still ongoing. You know, for me, if I was in a position to provide electricity for the country, I mean, that would be one of the first things I would do, because I know how important it is to economic development. I cannot tell you, Jumoke, exactly why we are getting it wrong in Nigeria, from the power projects of the Mambila, from the $16 billion that was budgeted in the early 2000s to whatever was budgeted in the last administration for the Mambila project. I can't explain why we are not getting it right. But the thing here is to look at the same time is the world has evolved, right? So there were ways that things were being done before. Now, if we look at the landline phones, growing up, we all had landline phones in our homes, right? And now, you seldom see a landline phone anywhere because everyone is using cell phones. So a lot of people are also moving to solar power, although it's quite expensive. And if we had enough electricity, more people will go into that business to produce, since we have the raw materials to produce them here. More people would be able to try to produce. It's lithium that we need. Is sand, quartz that we need for the solar panels. We have all those things here. What we don't have is electricity and proper technological know-how. If we have stable electricity and cost of factors of production go down, people will produce the solar energy, and maybe everybody can just start going off-grid instead, and we don't put that burden on the government totally. So this is also another angle to look at. Since we have been unable to get it right where there's a national distribution of this electricity. But another milestone, I would say, which was introduced by the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration, is the states being able to produce electricity on their own, to generate on their own from that executive order, and which we have seen what has happened in, if I'm not mistaken, Abia State. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I think if other states also start to replicate that model, see what they've done in those states, but not only see what they've done, because there are challenges that the Nigerians also, we can also be a problem. Some people will be bypassing meter, and therefore shortchanging the companies. So please, anybody out there that is bypassing meter, please, we should endeavor not to do that, because it's just the same thing as stealing. So they should look at how they can check all those kind of issues and then come up with better methods of supplying the electricity and checking the loss of power on the grid from people that divert the electricity. So I think the state governors need to also step up.
So talking about better methods, and this is also looking at other matters relating to the electricity sector. Talk about the regulatory framework for the Nigerian electricity sector has faced criticism for needing to be more effective and conducive to attracting investment. There are issues of inconsistent policies, bureaucratic hurdles, and difficulties enforcing regulations have also hindered progress in the power sector. Now, as a former lawmaker, how do you dissect some of these challenges, and how do you charge the president on this?
Thank you very much. This is a question that Nigerians will love that you asked, because that is where a lot of the problems are coming from. And I will still take you back to Section 32 of the Electricity Act, which is the National Electricity Regulatory Commission. All of this falls on them. And if whoever is there is not doing their job, the president needs to check them. They need to be called to order to make sure that the proper policies are brought and that these policies are implemented and that Nigerians get proper distribution of electricity. I think that is what is very important, and that is what will solve our problem.
But one other challenge that I think we shy away from in this country is electricity theft and non-payment of bills. I mean, there is an overwhelming concern that if electricity theft is not controlled urgently, it will contribute immensely to a continued cycle of mounting debt and inefficiencies for not just the discos, but also for the gencos. At the moment, there is an estimated average loss of about 21 billion naira annually in the power sector to energy theft. How effective, I'm asking you this question because you're a former lawmaker, how effective are the existing laws? And how do we tackle energy theft?
Okay, thank you. That's also a very good question. You see, the issue of energy theft has already been tackled. When I was in the House, I took a particular interest in the electricity sector, so I was frequenting the NERC building for different reasons. One of them was because of the Dang Agundi issue, which there was even a fire outbreak because people wouldn't move from there so that the new technology can be put there, new equipment that was bought. But that aside, right? So during that time, I had a discussion with the boss of the NERC at the time, I think Professor Garba, Dr. Garba, Dauda, or something like that. And when we had the discussion with him, I asked him, like, how do we mitigate this thing? I brought two things to him. The first one was the issue of the bands. How do you determine these bands? And how do you count the hours that come to make sure that if I'm paying this amount of money, I get this amount of electricity? And I suggested to them that they put some devices at the transformers to determine that. Then I also spoke to him about electricity theft and having smart meters and people bypassing. He said that they know what they send out. Like the disco, now if AEDC, for example, we're in Abuja, if the AEDC distributes 2,000 megawatts in a month, they know how much they are supposed to make from that 2,000 megawatts. So if they are supposed to make 2 million naira from 2,000 megawatts and they only make 1.4 million naira that month, then they know that 600,000, or rather 6,600 megawatts was stolen, right? So now what they do is that 600, they now calculate the average maybe over a year of how much is being stolen every month. And then they distribute that money into the bill of those people that paid for that 1,400. So in reality, there are no losses being made, Jumoke. That's just the fact of what is going on. So I think the discos need to just step up their game and provide Nigerians with the services that Nigerians much need for the development of this country and for the services that we're paying for.
All right. So as we wrap up on this issue, I mean, we have both agreed that this challenge is generational and has defied all attempts in the past to solve it. But what more do you think we need to do that we have not done?
As far as the electricity challenge?
Absolutely, yes.
Do you know, I think in this kind of place, I would urge the President and Commander-in-Chief to take a drastic measure. We need to do something that hasn't been done. We need to look at other means of generation. We can even try to go nuclear. I know it's far-fetched, it's idealistic, but I'm just throwing it out there that we need to do things differently. If what the others have been doing in the past hasn't worked, and the world has advanced from when Kainji Dam was built, there are other methods of generating. There's geothermal electricity, which we can also tap into. There's hydrothermal electricity that we can tap into. There's solar. So we need to go back to the drawing board, organize think tanks of people from different aspects of life, various walks of life, that will come up with a new schedule on how we need to address the electricity problem. There has to be a radical shift.
All right, then. I mean, a few minutes to go, so let's talk about you, Honorable Dambazau. What have you been up to since you stopped being a member of the House of Reps?
Well, I've been doing things like this, putting in my piece here and there for the benefit of the country. I've been doing consultations here and there, running. You know, I used to be into business anyway before I left, before I joined the National Assembly. So I've gone back into my business world, and then I've been doing a lot of exercising, and then I'm back in school as well. I'm pursuing a master's in ABU, Zaria, currently, an MBA. So yeah, that's what I've been up to so far.
So after your master's, all right, what's next for you politically?
After my, I can't say per se, because, you know, everything is in the hands of God. I am still active, though, politically, and even during the masters, whenever if I'm called to serve my country, I'm always available to serve my country. But for now, I think my primary focus is on the business and furthering my education. I think self-development spiritual growth. I've been focusing more on these things, my family, my parents, my friends. I've just making sure that I cultivate those relationships very well. So I think that's what I've been focused more on, because being in the politics and thrust into the limelight at such a young age, it was quite overwhelming at a point, and some of my relationships suffered because of that. So I think I've been doing more of building, rebuilding, and growing of my relationships with my family and my friends.
That's great to hear.
And myself as well.
I wish you the very best. But quickly before we go tonight, it's almost a year. In 1 minute, it's almost a year since President Bola Tinubu assumed office as the president of the country. How do you assess this administration so far? In 1 minute.
Okay, yes, thank you. To be honest, it's a breath of fresh air from the previous administration, where you feel like you don't have a leader that cares about you. So one thing that I would commend the president about, which I love about him, is that whenever something happens that affects Nigerians, he comes out and he talks to us, and he's not reading from paper. He talks from his heart. He tells us, okay, look, I understand what you people are going through. And then secondly, he listens to what Nigerians are going through. Now, if you take out what he just did about the cybersecurity levy and suspension of it, you can deduce from that the president is listening to what Nigerians are saying, and he's also concerned. Thirdly, the strides that have been made in terms of removal of subsidy, right? Because the petrol subsidy was draining the country, and nobody really had the guts to do it. So for him being able to do that, removal of that subsidy, I want to also commend the president on that. I think overall the government has done very well. The government is doing very well. There's room for improvement, and anywhere that we see any lapses, I will not hesitate to give a constructive criticism, so that our party, the APC, can
I must say a very big thank you to you, Honorable Shamsudeen Dambazau, former member, House of Representatives. Thank you so much for your perspectives tonight. And I look forward to more conversations with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Olajumoke. It's my pleasure being here as well.
Thank you very